What's up, everybody? It is PME Volleyball. We are back at it once again with another video. Today, what we are going to be creating is the ultimate volleyball highlight play tier list. We all have those moments in the game of volleyball, whether it's a monster block, a crazy save, a killer spike. We all have those plays in volleyball that we just love making more than the rest. I feel that personally, some of those highlight plays are more memorable, better, and just more rewarding than others. So what I thought we would do for today's video is take all of the highlight plays that you can make in volleyball and stick them on a tier list. The only thing I'll ever ask from you, if you like the content, is to hit that subscribe button. Go check out PME Volleyball Shorts if you want some more PME Volleyball content, and comment down below before the video starts what your favorite highlight play is to make. With that all out of the way, let's hop straight into the video. For our tier list today, we have 5 different tiers, and I have given them all fun names. At the top, we have the best feeling ever! It's pretty self-explanatory. The plays that go in that category are the best feelings ever! Right below that, we have the super duper tier. Those are the plays that are right outside of the best feeling ever. Then we have the kind of overrated, all right? This is like that middle ground. It's like, yeah, that's a highlight play, but if we're being honest, it's kind of overrated. Right below that, we have the meh tier. You know, it's just like, that play's kind of meh. It's more normal light than highlight. You know, it's just not that great of a highlight play if it were to be even considered one. And then at the bottom, we have the ankle socks tier, and I don't feel like I need to even explain myself with why a play would go in that tier. We all know why. So to start off the video, the first highlight play that we have is the monster block. Honestly, for me personally, I think that this is one of the best highlight plays you can make in the entire game of volleyball. It is the flashiest form of defense a volleyball player can make, and it also scores points. You know, digs sometimes don't necessarily correlate to points, but monster blocks, on the other hand, almost always guarantee that that team gets the point. In my volleyball career, I have racked up quite a few blocks myself, and I will say it is just the best feeling to shut down the opponent on the other side of the net. In my personal opinion, I think the monster block without a doubt belongs at the top of the tier list in the best feeling ever category. If you have gotten a monster block, you know why it is just one of the best highlight plays you can possibly make in the entire game of volleyball. Next up, we have the ace, and I will say I do have a couple of strong feelings about the ace. It is the only skill in the entire game of volleyball that is completely controlled by one person. Most other skills you have to depend on your teammates, sometimes the other team, for the outcome of whatever that play might be. But when it comes to serving, it is just you, one person versus 3 in most cases on the other side of the net in serve receives. I'm going to be getting an ace in the super duper tier, and that is only because the next highlight play we have up on the list is getting an ace on game point. That is a very rare scenario where you, the volleyball player, go back there and you don't miss your serve. You in fact win the game for your volleyball team, and I would say that is easily, without a doubt, belonging in the best feeling ever tier. I look back at my entire volleyball career and I don't even think I've gotten an ace on game point. I remember one play in college specifically where I went back there and I served, getting the other team out of system. It was a 5-set match that we had played, and then they had to send over a free ball. We used it to score a point. So that's the closest I think I ever came to getting a ace on game point. But for those who have gotten an ace on game point, like, you guys are just absolutely cold. You have the ice in the veins. You guys are Himothy's, all about that action. Good for you. Easily, without a doubt, on top of this tier list. Okay, up next, we have digging the other team's best player. I will say this is a good feeling. You know, we've all gone up against that one hitter that's committed to that one D1 school, and just once during the volleyball match, we get our forearms in the right place with the prediction, and that volleyball pops up into the middle of the court, and it's a pretty good feeling. I won't lie to you. The only real reason that I think this play in particular belongs in the kind of overrated tier is because they're far and few between that these instances happen. And like, yeah, you get a good dig, but like the play's not over and you guys still have to score that point. And honestly, that's just my overall problem with defensive highlight plays in the first place. Besides blocks, like if you get a good dig, like you're still dependent on your team to get those other 2 touches to score a point. And that sometimes takes away from the whole highlight play aspect. So I'm gonna put getting a dig on the other team's best player in the kind of overrated category. Then we have the pancake. The illustrious pancake. When you stretch out your hand across the floor and that volleyball hits your hand just right to pop up into the air. I think this is about the most flashy highlight play you can make playing back row defense, and it is super rare. There are not a lot of occurrences where it is a good idea to try and make a pancake. It's kind of like a last resort type of play, and that's why it's considered to be a highlight, you know, because it's just not something that happens very often. I'm going to actually put pancakes in the meh tier, and the only reason I put them in the meh tier is because there's just not a whole lot of substance behind making a pancake. Like if you're watching the game of volleyball and you see a team make a pancake, it's not going to make you feel a certain type of way, especially in the way that, like, you know, getting an ace on game point or getting a monster block, a monster spike like that. Those types of highlight plays are going to make you feel some sort of emotion, and I don't believe that the pancake necessarily does that, so I'm going to be sticking it in the meh tier. If you disagree with me, please let me know in the comments. But before we hop any further into the video, I would like to take a quick chance to thank my friends over at Victory Insoles for being the sponsor of today's video. If you are one that likes getting monster blocks or hitting volleyballs super hard on your jump serves or in the front row, then I think you will be a fan of Victory Insoles. Victory Insoles are designed to help return energy in a very explosive manner. This means when you are in the middle of doing your approach, Victory Insoles can help you with your overall explosiveness. Being explosive in the game of volleyball is everything, and that's why I think having a pair of carbon fiber insoles, and in this case the world's best, that being Victory, is a great idea for all volleyball players. I am telling you now that I have not played volleyball without Victory Insoles in the past 2 years now, and every time I have slipped my Victory Insoles into my volleyball shoes, I've just felt more springy, and I've felt like I can play volleyball at my highest performance level. I definitely feel that if you are looking for a volleyball product that you might like, I think you should check out Victory Insoles. Ever since I've started wearing them, I've felt more explosive, and I think you might too. You can check out the link in the description of this video to get yourself a discount on your very own pair of Victory Insoles. Thanks again to Victory for being the sponsor of today's video, helping me create all of my highlight plays, and with that out of the way, let's hop straight back into the rest of the rankings of the highlight plays for today's video. Up next, we have the 10-foot line bounce. This one is easy for me. It is easily a best feeling ever type of volleyball play. If you're able to hit the volleyball straight down, which is a very rare occurrence, mainly because the net is there, and then right above the net, there's usually a block. It is just one of the feelings that you'll never be able to recreate if you're only able to do it like once or twice. Like, there's nothing that brings me more joy in volleyball than hitting a volleyball and just seeing it go straight down, bouncing in front of the defense, because volleyballs usually aren't meant to bounce that close to the volleyball net on the other side of the volleyball net, you know? I think that the 10-foot line bounce is an absolute thing of beauty, easily one of the best plays you can make in the entire game of volleyball, and therefore it is deserving of being in the best feeling ever category. Okay, up next, this is a fun one. We have the headshot in the game of volleyball. I would say getting a headshot in the game of volleyball is a more like volleyball technique type of play, because when it comes to a 10-foot bounce, like that's just straight, raw, unfiltered power going from your hand into the volleyball, into the floorboards. And you're usually trying to hit a deeper shot in order to, you know, get contact with somebody's forehead in the game of volleyball. Don't get me wrong, I love a headshot as much as the next guy, but I think that the 10-foot line bounce is a little bit better when it comes to a hitting highlight play. I'm going to be actually putting the headshot in the super duper category. We are going to be putting it in the front of the super duper category, in front of the ace. I just think a headshot is maybe a notch down from getting that coveted 10-foot line bounce in a game. Okay, we have the setter dump up next. And if I am being completely honest, I am a setter myself. I absolutely love scoring with a setter dump, but I think this might be the most overrated highlight play in the entire game of volleyball. That is because I think there is a high risk, low reward ratio when it comes to the setter dump. And the other problem with setter dumps for me personally is, if we're just being completely honest, they're not that cool of a highlight play to actually make in the game of volleyball. Like, usually it's just this rinky-dink little tip over the net, and it's like, yeah, congratulations, you scored, you caught the defense lacking, but there's just a lot cooler things you can do with a volleyball, you know? So I'm actually going to be putting the setter dump, crazily enough, as a setter myself, I'm going to be putting it in the ankle socks tier. It is probably one of the lowest forms of a highlight play you can make, simply because it's just not super cool. And right next to the setter dump, I think I just need to put tipping in general in the ankle socks tier, because while tipping is usually the smart play that you are making in a couple of instances, or maybe the pass is a little bit bit too tight, or you just can't quite get a full swing on it. I just don't think it is that like cool looking to tip the volleyball, especially when you do it a whole lot. So I think the tipping of the volleyball also belongs in the ankle socks tier. We're gonna put it at the bottom of the tier list. So far, it's just not the coolest highlight play in the world. In fact, it's not even the closest. I think it's probably gonna end up ranking pretty low, if not the lowest highlight play on today's list. And then we have the roll shot, okay? And I will say there are a couple of instances where the roll shot can actually look pretty cool, but they really only look cool when you go back and like edit the footage, slow it down a little bit. And the only instance where a roll shot looks really cool is when you roll it just over the block and the blocker's trying to reach back and get that volleyball, but they can't quite get it, and it ends up landing right behind the blockers in front of the defense. But besides that, pretty much every other type of a roll shot that can be considered a highlight play just isn't super cool. So I'm actually going to be putting that in the ankle socks tier as well, with the setter dump and tipping. I'm pretty sure those three in particular are just going to be at the bottom of the barrel for today's list, and they're just all right together because they're similar highlight plays when you really think about it. And then we have tooling the block, okay? I don't think there are a lot of instances where tooling the block is super cool. The only instance where tooling the block is actually cool is if you're able to hit the blocker in the head. But besides that, like tooling the block, it's not the coolest. Usually it just means that the block wasn't in the right spot, or you were just able to hit the volleyball at an angle that allowed you to score the point. But besides that, like tooling the block, it's whatever. I think it's belonging of being in the meh tier. And then we have the one-handed block. And if there is a singular play in the entire game of volleyball where the high risk, low reward ratio applies perfectly, it has to be the one-handed block. It is only cool if it works, and if it doesn't, you are probably going to get yelled at by your volleyball coach. But I have done a handful of one-handed blocks in my life in volleyball practice and maybe in some tournaments that weren't super official. But besides that, I have never actually been ballsy enough to try and pull this off in game because, again, there's just a lot of risk, not a very high reward, but when it works, it is a thing of beauty. I'm going to put it in the best feeling ever category because I have gotten it a handful of times, and it does feel so good to be able to predict the offense on the other side of the net perfectly in order for it to work. Okay, up next we have the chase down save. You know, chasing down a volleyball, usually there's like a table or a chair, maybe a bench that you're flipping over to bring that volleyball back into the court. That's a cool highlight play, you know, it's cool, but I also think it's kind of overrated, you know, because like usually even if you do bring that volleyball back, you have to give a free ball to the other team, and then they have an opportunity to score on offense, and it's just kind of overrated in that sense. You know, it's a highlight play for sure. Yeah, it looks cool, like the effort is there, but like in terms of practicality, like it's just not gonna score your team a whole lot of points, and points are king, especially when it comes to creating highlights. Okay, so it definitely belongs for me personally in the kind of overrated tier. Then we have the kick save, and honestly there just aren't a whole lot of scenarios in the game of volleyball where you should be kicking the volleyball. Usually if you can kick the volleyball, you can get your platform on the volleyball, and it's better just to get your platform on the volleyball. So it's like a very rare occurrence where a kick save actually works. Maybe it's paired with like a chase down, or it's just like right out in front of you. Sometimes, heck, even if a volleyball is hit so fast it just hits your foot and pops up, like it's just a very rare occurrence for a kick save to actually be useful highlight play. But I do say I do enjoy seeing a good kick save, so I'm going to actually put it in the kind of overrated tier. I think that's where it best belongs because it's definitely not deserving of being in those top two tiers in my opinion. Okay, then we have the setter swing, all right? And while I thought that the setter dump is super lame, I do think setter swings are actually pretty cool, especially when a setter is able to go up there and hit that volleyball hard. I think it makes for a pretty good highlight play. I think it appropriately belongs in the second to highest tier, mainly because like there is a little bit of risk in going for that setter swing, but when it works and you pull it off correctly, like it can be pretty cool. You know, I've done a couple of them in my own volleyball career, and every time it's worked nicely, it usually makes for a nice piece of content. So that's why I think it belongs in the super duper tier. Then we have the fake attack jump set. I've seen a lot of this lately where if on the first touch a setter is in the back row, they pass it up to the middle of the court, and instead of the libero taking second hands, what the outside hitter will do is run a fake bick out of the back row, and then they jump and set that volleyball usually to the outside pin. And I think that volleyball play is really cool. You know, it definitely takes some practice. You have to be at a certain level to pull it off consistently, but it does make for a good volleyball highlight play. I'm gonna also put that one in the super duper tier. Okay, then we have the one-on-one block. This is not to be confused with a monster block or a one-handed block. This is when it is you versus the hitter on the other side of the net. And if you don't know, every time you are one-on-one with only one blocker on the other side of the net, as the hitter, you should win that matchup. So when a one-on-one blocker wins the matchup on the one-on-one hitter, it makes for a highlight play, you know? But the problem with this type of highlight play in particular is, like, if you're a spectator and you see a monster block, you know, that volleyball hitting your block and then the floorboards and then bouncing really high, you're gonna oohs and ahs at that. A lot of spectators won't necessarily appreciate the difficulty it takes to read and react and make a one-on-one block as much as they would a monster block, you know? I don't think it's actually overrated, but I do believe it belongs in the kind of overrated tier. I think that makes sense. I hope you guys are following along. Okay, then we have the hard angle swing. This is when you hit that volleyball from 4 to 4, or maybe 2 to 2 if you're on the right side, basically hitting a hard angle, maybe even so hard that it lands inside the 10-foot line. Again, it's one of those highlight plays that as volleyball players, we see that and we're like, that is crazy ridiculous. But as a spectator, it's a little more hard to appreciate. And for that reason, just like the one-on-one block, I think it belongs in the kind of overrated tier for this tier list ranking video. Then we have the overpass. When that volleyball is passed over the net just high enough where you can go up and maybe make a fist or maybe make an open hand and just smash that volleyball back down to earth on the other side of the net. I think that is one of the best feelings ever. Okay, I think it's one of the best feelings in the entire game of volleyball. Without a doubt, for me personally, it belongs in the best feelings ever category at the very top of the list. And last but certainly not least, we have the long rally point win. When you have a rally that goes like 30 to 45 seconds and both teams are fighting for it, usually there are some crazy saves, crazy touches are being made in order to keep that volleyball in play, and your team finally comes out victorious. I'm gonna be completely honest, I think it's kind of overrated, okay? And that is because volleyball is not necessarily an endurance sport. And usually those long rallies aren't super flashy. It's just that grit and grind volleyball. And every time I've either won or lost a long rally, I've just found myself kind of being a little bit tired, you know? I'm not a super big fan of a long rally. I don't think it makes for the craziest highlight play ever. And for that reason, I'm going to be putting it in the kind of overrated tier list. And that is going to wrap up our highlight play tier list. So let's review. At the bottom of the list, in the ankle socks tier, we have the setter dump, the roll shot, and tipping the volleyball. In the met tier, we only have 2 candidates, which is the pancake and then tooling the block. In the kind of overrated, we have digging the other team's best player. We have the chase down save, the kick save, the one-on-one block, the hard angle swing, and then the long rally win. In the super duper tier, we have the headshot, the ace, the setter swing, and the fake attack jump set. And at the top of the list, we had 5 winners, being the monster block, the ace on game point, the 10-foot line bounce, the one-handed block, and the overpass swing. That is going to do it for today's video. If you would have re-ranked these plays in any other particular order, or you think I left any out, make sure to let me know in the comments down below. Leave a like on this video, subscribe if you are new, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace.